Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Welcome, folks, to the WorryFree Retirement. And yes, I'm that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and full-time fiduciary, Tony Walker. And we got a great show today, and let me set the stage. Years and years ago, I used to do a lot of educational workshops. In fact, I kind of reminisced a little bit and thought about back in 2007. That was a game changer for me. Not only was it the year before the stock market crashed in 2008, but that was the year that I contracted with a local television station in Louisville, Kentucky, to be their featured retirement specialist on a morning show they had every day of the week, and I was assigned to be the retirement specialist on Monday mornings. I did this for 7 straight years, and it was funny. I got in a routine. I would get up in the morning in Bowling Green and drive on Monday on I-65, heading up to Louisville. In many cases, I used to have educational workshops at a local Courtyard Marriott, this little room there on Blairwood Road. And so I'd swing by the Courtyard Marriott, get the room set up for the 30 or 45 people that would attend the workshop that night, head on downtown, do the 30-minute show. Then my offices back then were located of all places, a Starbucks over on the corner of Hurstbourne and Shelbyville Road. I'd drive to the Starbucks, meet people into the night, drive back at about 6 o'clock to the Marriott, conduct the workshop, get up the next morning, meet with people. Later that Tuesday, drive back to Bowling Green. I did this for years. In fact, in the studios with us is our own Aaron Orander, who worked at the TV station in downtown Louisville at the time. And for a brief hiatus there, me and Aaron actually did the show together. You remember those days, don't you, Aaron?
Yes, sir. I remember those days 12 years ago when I started working at Tony Walker Financial. And what a roller coaster of a ride it's been this past decade. And hey, who knows? Maybe we can do this for 12 more years.
Thanks again for all your service, Aaron, and thank you for the TV station allowing you to head off from there and head over to WorryFree Productions, which we've done, I think. How many shows have we done on the WorryFree Retirement up to date, Aaron?
Well, it's hard to believe this, but we have done over 550 episodes of the WorryFree Retirement. In fact, today's episode is number 563, so guess what? We're well on our way to catching up to Gunsmoke.
Okay, good stuff. So why am I even talking about the old workshops of old that I used to do? Well, one of the things that's starting to rear its head out there is the popularity of fixed annuities, specifically fixed indexed annuities. So as we record this show in April of 2025, the sale of annuities is exploding. Folks, more and more people, even the folks on Wall Street who used to deride these products, are starting to offer annuities. So my thoughts: why in the world, before you rush out and buy an annuity from just anybody, why would you want to at least consider someone like myself, Tony Walker, who's been utilizing these annuities longer than most people even knew what they were? In fact, after 9/11, that's when I started focusing on fixed annuities and specifically fixed indexed annuities. So what I'm going to do here is kind of go through the whiteboard, but first let me set the stage, okay? Again, it's April 2025. With today's stock market resembling a wild ride on a roller coaster, and of course, as I said, with more and more advisors and institutions starting to pitch annuities, I thought now would be a good time to have a refresher course on these fixed indexed annuities. And again, folks, I've been offering these for years, and these fixed indexed annuities, while great products, as we're going to find out, were actually a little better back in 2000 and 2001. So if you're interested in annuities at all, maybe again, you've heard about these fixed indexed annuities, this is a time to really take close attention, because if you're getting pitched these, you need to understand how these products work. Oh, incidentally, before I get into my little presentation here, a great book on this subject is one I wrote called Annuities Made Easy. It's absolutely free. You can get it one of two ways. Either download it at TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or if you'd like a hard copy of Annuities Made Easy, simply email Gina at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's Gina at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Let her know you want a hard copy of Annuities Made Easy. Be sure you provide your name, phone number, and mailing address. Okay, let's kind of get into this. And again, you're going to have to really hang on tight here because I'm going to get into some details of the fixed indexed annuity. So what is a fixed indexed annuity? Well, first of all, whenever you see the word fixed, that means that the annuity is actually guaranteeing the principal and any interest it might pay. So there's really two very popular annuities right now. There's also something called a fixed interest annuity. And I do want to cover that very briefly because, again, as we record this show in late April 2025, I hadn't sold fixed interest annuities for years. In fact, that's why fixed indexed annuities came on the scene in 2000, 2002, in that era. Because back then, if you'll remember, interest rates started dropping. Interest rates didn't even come up to reasonable amounts of return until the last year or two. So a fixed interest annuity, again, currently, they're paying around 5% guaranteed. Now, this is what's called a yield, and this is really important to keep in mind because we're going to talk about income riders in a minute and how people have been duped into not understanding the difference between an income rider payout rate versus a yield. So a yield, just like a CD, pays a yield. A fixed interest annuity is issued by an insurance company. It pays a yield. So let's use an example. Let's say you have $100,000, all right? Sitting at the bank, a 401k, whatever, anything can go into these annuities. And you're like, man, I'm tired of taking risk, tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market. I just want my principal protected. I would like some income, but I do not wish to encroach on the principal. I want that principal locked and loaded and guaranteed. So we might do this for 5 years. So the guaranteed rate is 5% for 5 years. Pretty darn good. No fees on this. Agents like myself who sell these get a one-time upfront commission. So we're one and done. This product here pays about 2.5% commission. So we're going to get about $2,500. That's it. There are no more fees. We're going to service the contract, but that's it. That's all we get paid. And the insurance company is the one that pays our commission. You don't. And we'll talk about surrender charges if we have time. But we're assuming you keep this product for the full 5 years. And in this example, obviously, we're going to send you $5,000 a year in interest. And yes, you can take it monthly. And that is guaranteed. So this is pretty nice. You know, sometimes I have people retired. They just want a little extra income. Maybe they're figuring out a way to produce some income to make a car payment or whatever, just real simple stuff. But they like this. Or they might say, well, I don't need the interest. Can I just let it compound? Of course you can. And the beauty is at the end of the 5 years, let's say you've taken the interest out over that 5-year period. The 5 years is up. We know for a fact that you're going to have your $100,000. Pretty cool stuff. And again, we offer these products. Be happy to talk to you about them in more detail. So that's a fixed interest. But what is the fixed indexed? Okay. First of all, I'm going to put 0% here, and we're going to talk about the same $100,000. So you say, why do you have 0%? Well, first of all, the fixed indexed annuity, unlike a lot of people will tell you, you'll probably make 5, 6, 7%. It is not guaranteed to pay anything, folks. There are years with a fixed indexed annuity, and you'll see this in a minute, depending on what the stock market's doing, you may not make anything. Now, you cannot lose any money. Remember, anytime you see the word fixed, there's no losses to that principal or whatever you make. So how does a fixed indexed annuity work? It's based on when you took the contract out. So let's just for the heck of it say you're going to take one out here in June 1st, 2025, and then we're going to look at this again in a year. So most of them are based on an annual contract. So all they're going to do, they're going to take your $100,000. The insurance company is going to take that off. They're going to use their normal dividends and whatever they make on it, and they're going to buy options in the stock market. I'm just making this real simple. And if the market between here and here goes up from, that's called point to point, from this point to point, by the end of June 1st, they're going to pay a percentage, listen closely, a percentage of whatever the stock market made. So let's say the stock market went up 10% that year. More than likely, you're not going to make 10%. All right? They're going to pay, let's keep this real simple. They're going to pay something called a participation rate. We call it a par rate. And let's say the par rate is 40%. Now, this is where I would say the index annuities of today aren't as good as the ones 20 years ago. Par rates used to be in the 70 and 80% range, and I'll show you why this is important. But if the par rate is 40%, and let's say they're using as their index the S&P 500, and that was what you made, right? 10% if you were in the market, but you're not in the market, you're in an indexed annuity, they're going to pay 40% of 10%, so your rate of return is actually 4. Okay, and this is why many people are looking at a combination of these. We do usually a combination because somebody might say, well, wait a minute, I only would have made 4, even though the market made 10, but over here I could have made 5 guaranteed without worrying about the market. Why wouldn't I just do this? And some people are doing this right now because these interest rates are so high. But let's say, and I'm going to, Aaron's going to have to follow me over, but let's say the next year, so this will be your new floor. So now that's a nice thing. So $104,000, we go out the next year, 6/1/27, and let's say the market, this point to this point, crashes. This is why people like indexed annuities. You do not lose what you just made. However, here we are again, we're still only at $104,000 because again, you actually technically didn't make any money. You kept your new floor, but since the market crashed, you didn't make anything. But now here's where an indexed annuity is kind of interesting. Picture yourself in the stock market. You'd be way down here waiting for that thing to come back. It could be years before you get back. In fact, we saw this in 2008 when the market crashed. It took over 4 years to get back to break even. But in an indexed annuity case, we got room for one more here, Aaron. Aaron, follow me over here. Now we go out one more year. Now we're way down here, which we get to start here. And let's say it does go up 20%. I mean, that market could go up 20%. You would make 40% of 20. You would make 8%. So you have a new level here. So you had 8% to 104. I'm just ballparking it. That's roughly 113,000. And that's your new floor. So at least you know you never can lose what you made. So these work well over long term. In fact, usually with a fixed indexed annuity, we usually set those up between 7 and 10 years. This is still kind of a long-term play, folks, because over the short term, there could be years you don't make anything. If you need short-term money, if you're looking for an annuity that's more accessible within the next 3 to 5 to 6 years, especially as of the date of this recording with interest rates so high, we might go here because this is a sure thing. My concern is with these fixed indexed annuities, many of you are being told you're going to make 5, 6, 7%. That's not accurate at all. Now, when we come back, I'm going to show you a ploy that several advisors have used over the years that is very deceptive. It is not accurate at all. And now we're starting to see the problem of this sales pitch that was given years ago as people come to us frustrated that they didn't understand the difference between a payout rate and a yield. So when I return, we're going to talk about the idea of a payout rate versus a yield. What is an income rider attached to the fixed indexed annuity? And again, folks, if this is sounding a little complicated, but it's like you're interested in this, you want to actually learn how these products work, both the pros and the cons, I encourage you to download Annuities Made Easy. Folks, I've written about as many annuities as anybody in the country. I've written personally over $700 million of annuities, over 3,000 contracts. We got a full-time staff. You're going to meet Heather Hughes in just a second, talking about our research. We know what we're doing when it comes to annuities. You got one shot to get this right. You don't want to get stuck in the wrong annuity. So stay tuned. When I come back, we'll talk about the income rider, the difference between the yield and the actual index itself, and what the difference is between yield and payout. Good stuff coming your way. I'm Tony Walker. We'll be right back.
This Tony Walker Financial 5-star review comes to us from James and Anne Marie. COVID did not put a dent in our annuities, and I am confident this storm will not either. Every night after I watch every financial expert say a different kind of doom and gloom on the TV, my wife and I sleep like babies in the loving arms of Tony Annuities. Thanks to Tony Walker and everyone at the Tony team. If you'd like to read more of our 5-star reviews, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Mr. Greg Ray. Greg, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today.
Nice to be here, Tony. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. So what prompted you to contact us at this time? Because you've only been a client, about a year or so. So what prompted you to contact us?
I just happened on Sunday morning to see the Tony Walker Show, quite frankly, Tony. And we bought your book, Live Well, Die Broke, and your story and your principles and your Christian foundation and the balance of, you know, what do you need to have? What do you want to leave to your kids or what have you? Because I got a couple of boys and their families, and then the rest of it, how you want to live your life while you still can live your life, that is. So we stopped in for a visit. We simply came in and asked for a visit, and we got to sit down with you, and that was about a year and a half ago, and we're so glad we did. So.
And again, not to disparage anybody, but going from a large bank to more of a, I'd say we're more of a boutique firm, locally owned and everything, service-wise and everything, what have you experienced maybe that's a little different?
The biggest thing is, and probably the most surprising thing is, the presentation of the suite of products that you had. If we wanted to stay in the stock market and play the stock market game, which is a little bit more risky, you had the Charles Schwab product suite, fine and dandy. We could continue doing what we've been doing basically through the bank. The fixed income annuity package, some of the things that you had in long-term care planning, the tax planning, the retirement planning, and making a plan and working the plan, and the responsiveness of all of your staff is just incredible.
Well, we appreciate your business and hopefully many more years to come. So thank you, Greg, for doing business with Tony Walker Financial.
And Tony, best to you. We appreciate all you've done for us.
You're welcome.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
Don't let the fear of running out of money in retirement keep you up at night. Turn your 401k into mailbox money for life by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 877-499-9255. Welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement. As we go down memory lane thinking about when I first started offering these products called fixed indexed annuities right around 9/11, I'm reminded about how much they have changed. And while these are still excellent products for savers who are looking to protect their money, who want to participate in stock market growth without any risk, there's also some concerns I've had that they're not quite the products they were. Let me explain what happens here. You got to remember, the one thing the insurance companies control are the indexes and what's called the participation rates or caps. In fact, I remember back in 2001 when I was studying these products, I went to the home office of an insurance company, and a gentleman in the back of the room had a question. Of course, back then the participation rates were 70, 80%, caps were 10%. I mean, these products were great. And he said, hey, can't you all just lower the caps or participation rates? And what happens if you do that? And the gentleman who responded, he said, well, that's probably not going to happen. But he said, it could, right? And the guy said, yeah, but it's probably not going to happen. Well, guess what happened? They've lowered the participation rates and caps. So again, these products are great products, but I will say I don't think they're quite the products they used to be because of what's happened. The other thing you got to be careful of is indices outside normal indices, such as the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P, indices you can track. We have found that some of the indices offered by the insurance companies, which are proprietary, have not performed. So be careful of going by what's called back-tested indices, which may not happen. None of that stuff's guaranteed, folks. So don't get duped into thinking that because some index made 30% last year, it'll do that this year. It's probably not going to happen, and we have been perplexed and sometimes very frustrated of what we call these proprietary indices. All right, real quickly before I get into this is important stuff. Basically, there are 4 types of annuities. There's fixed interest, fixed indexed, immediate, and variable annuities. Now, we do immediate occasionally. We do fixed interest, fixed index. We don't do variable because of the risk and the fees. However, there's a brand new annuity on the block, a new kid on the block that we've been studying and we might offer in the very near future. But to tell us more about this annuity, which is gaining a lot of traction and something you might hear about, we're going to turn it over to our own Heather Hughes in our Bowling Green office, who is also a fiduciary and specializes in our annuity research. Heather, tell us about this new type of annuity that's starting to get a little traction in the financial world.
It is starting to get very popular. It's called a registered index-linked annuity. And it's basically the financial world's response, the Wall Street world's response to an indexed annuity. Previously, those are indexed annuities are insurance products and are not sold by brokerage firms. A registered index-linked annuity is just that. It is registered with the government through the SEC. And it has the downside protection or even a buffer on client's principal. And then in return, it has caps on the returns on a positive time standpoint. So it's very similar to an indexed annuity, but it allows those registered with the SEC to sell them versus just having an insurance license.
And as we're understanding these products, we currently have not sold any of these, but we're looking at them pretty seriously. But basically, the potential is you could make more with one of these products than a traditional indexed annuity. The downside is you could lose some money with these, whereas an indexed annuity basically has no potential for loss. Is that correct?
Correct. You can set a buffer for a 0% loss. There's going to be trade-offs with that with the upside caps. So it's kind of a give and take there. Typically, you're going to see some sort of buffer of anywhere between 5, 10, 15, 20% on the losses, which means that they'll cover the first, let's say you have a 10% buffer, they would cover the first 10% loss. Anything above 10% would detract from your account value.
So that word index is in there. You just need to be careful and realize you could lose money with these products, unlike a fixed indexed annuity, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Heather, for your time and all your work and research on these products.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. In our time remaining, this was one of the saddest sales pitches I've ever seen and allowed this particular firm to sell a lot of annuities. And here's the sales pitch. This was 10 or 15 years ago. See if you wouldn't bite on this sales pitch. Mr. Jones, what if I could offer you a contract with no risk that could earn as much as 24% in 1 year, but at a minimum pay you 4%? Now keep in mind, when this sales pitch was prevalent out there, interest rates were like 2% at the bank, and the MIGAs, the multi-year guaranteed annuities, they weren't paying squat. So it's like, well, who wouldn't do that? You mean I could make as much as 24 and never go below 4? That's right. Well, that sales pitch fell by the wayside when people realized that the market's not always going to do that great. And also that 4% has a huge catch. So let's see what was going on with this sales pitch and why you got to be careful when buying an annuity. So what they were pitching was something called a monthly point-to-point. Now that's the crediting method that you can select within an annuity, which is fine. And back in those days, the monthly point-to-point cap was around 2%, okay? So what that means is for any 1 month, okay, let's just say the stock market is doing this, all right? Any 1 month, as long as the stock market goes up, the cap would be 2% that month. So we're assuming the stock market goes up every month. In a perfect world, you get 2%, obviously times 12 months. If that happened, which it could, you would get a 24% return. That on 100,000, that'd be $24,000. It would be added to the 100,000. So now you'd have 124,000 locked in. You could never lose it. And all is well in Mudville. That would be pretty cool. Now, but here's how monthly point-to-point works. What they don't tell you is that's very difficult to do, and here's why. If this were rocking along and by the 10th month you're going, man, I'm going to make a lot of money on this contract. What if we went through another 08 and the market crashed and went down 20%? What they don't tell you is on a monthly point-to-point, there is no floor on the loss that month. So if the market dropped 20% over the next 2 years, you wouldn't lose anything, but you'd be back to zero. Remember in the last segment, we talked about 0%. Now you might say, well, zero's your hero when we're having a downturn market, but still you didn't make anything. Oh, incidentally, I know we've got the radio show out there and the radio listeners. This may be hard to follow because I'm on a whiteboard on the TV show. We have a great YouTube channel. You just go to youtube.com, type in Tony Walker Financial, and you can watch this episode on YouTube so you can see all of the whiteboard and what I'm covering. So for the radio listeners, I apologize. This should be still good stuff, but you may want to go back and watch that show on YouTube. So the point is, that was their 24%. So you say, well, shoot, I didn't make 24% that year, but I got that 4% guaranteed, right? Kinda. Let's go over here to the whiteboard a little farther over. So imagine they put you in this annuity. This was the sales pitch. We can either get you up to 24, minimum of 4. So what are they talking about? Well, that first year, we'll put year 1 here, you had your $100,000, but you made 0%, right? Because in that year, the market didn't do anything. It was a point-to-point. The market tanked, so all you got was 0. You still have 100,000. But over here, true to form, it's called an income rider. You made 4% guaranteed. And you're like, well, Tony, that's what they told me was going to happen. So let's kind of take this out over the next 10 years, because a lot of people, it took them several years to realize that what they were sold was a not accurate sales presentation whatsoever. In fact, it was almost unethical the way this was pitched. So what happens is we fast forward, but let's just say in 10 years on a guaranteed basis, whatever that is, maybe that income rider is now worth $150, and maybe the contract value's grown to $140. You're not overly impressed at the contract value. You thought you might make 24% several years. It didn't. But you go, oh my gosh, I got this. I've had the contract 10 years. I've made 4% guaranteed. Just send me my $150,000. Yeah, just cut me a check. And then this is what people is finding out. Folks, this 4% is not a yield like the MYGA. It's growing at 4%, but there is a huge catch to get this out. See, this is called an income account. An income account can never be liquidated for its full value. You'd have to liquidate the contract value to get that. And the contract value may not have grown. So the 150 on any kind of income product is really an accounting number. It is not a real number. So what the insurance company is doing, the reason they can guarantee this high return on the money is because you're not going to be able to pull that out lump sum. They know they can hold on to the money, and they're going to pay you what's called a payout rate. Now, this is what people don't understand. Remember to go back to the MYGA. Remember the MYGA. If you had $100,000, you made 5%, you could take that interest out. It would not affect the principal. You'd still have your $100,000. With an income account, let's say this pays out whatever it is, $8,000 a year or whatever it's going to pay out now that it's worth $150. You can't liquidate it lump sum. You have to take it out as an installment, or what I like to call mailbox money. So what you've got to watch is this. The $8,000 is being deducted from over here. So what's going to happen is it will start to draw down that principal. Again, a yield would allow the principal to stay level. It would never go down. This is not a yield. This is a payout rate. The payout rate gets deducted from the principal. So theoretically, in 20 years, let's say, and again, it depends on what this contract value does. It still might earn some interest, but in 20 years, let's say, this is gone. Now, since it's mailbox money, if you're still alive or your spouse is still alive, you'll still get the $8,000. It's still a good deal from that standpoint. The point was it was missold. This is not a yield. You can't just yank the money out. And this is my concern right now because there's a lot of income products out there that are good products. They're paying 6-7% guaranteed. We have these products. But you have to remember, folks, there's a huge catch to get that money. The insurance company can pay you those payout rates because they know they're going to basically hold on the money for the rest of your life. So here's what I would suggest right now. You might be looking at this or listening to the radio and going, man, this is kind of confusing. I like these annuities, but I'm totally confused now, Tony. Well, that's why you need to talk to an expert in this world of annuities, and specifically somebody that can provide a written game plan so that the annuity will work for you. Don't rush out and buy an annuity without a game plan, folks. In most cases, it's going to come back to haunt you. So why don't you do this right now? Why don't you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, click on that Let's Get Started. I would be happy to talk to you by phone at no obligation. And if it warrants, I'll be happy to meet with you in person to go through a free analysis and provide that written game plan before you possibly get stuck in a wrong annuity. So log on now, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call us anytime at 877-499-9255. Well, folks, we've enjoyed being with you today. You remember next week on the Worry-Free Retirement, if all else fails between now and then, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.